Superman is one of the most loved superheroes in the world. For decades, he has been known as the hero of hope, truth, and justice. His story usually begins the same way: born on Krypton, sent to Earth as his home planet explodes, raised by loving parents, and growing up to become the Man of Steel. But in DC's Absolute Superman storyline, things take a very shocking and disturbing turn. The new comic suggests that Superman may have actually killed his parents, Jor-El and Lara, in one of the darkest twists ever seen in his origin story. This changes how fans see Superman completely and puts him in a nightmare loop that makes his past even more tragic than ever before. The issue in question, Absolute Superman: 11, written by Jason Aaron with art by Carmen Di Giandomenico, takes Superman's history and pushes it into a darker and more painful direction. Instead of the comforting image of Jor-El and Lara sacrificing everything to send their son away to safety, this story paints a picture of Kal-El stuck inside endless nightmares, where he is forced to relive Krypton's destruction again and again. And in one of the most shocking panels, Superman actually ends up destroying his own parents. This new angle adds a heartbreaking and terrifying dimension to Superman's already heavy backstory. It also connects with past Superman stories, but flips them upside down into something far more disturbing. Fans who are used to Superman being a beacon of light may find this storyline unsettling, but at the same time, it proves just how versatile and layered the character of Superman can be when DC chooses to reimagine him. In Absolute Superman 11, Kal-El is trapped in a horrifying hallucination where he is judged by Krypton's Science League. These were the same scientists who ignored his father Jor-El's warnings about the planet's destruction. In this nightmare trial, the Science League condemns Jor-El and Lara to hang from the skies above Kandor for 100 years. To make things worse, Superman himself is sentenced to the Phantom Zone for the so-called crime of being an orphan. This cruel judgment breaks Superman, and in a fit of despair, he releases a massive blast of energy. What comes next is horrifying. The comic doesn't directly show every detail, but it heavily implies that Superman's power blast disintegrates his own parents, who were hanging as punishment. The Science League members are shown melting from the heat of Superman's energy, so it's clear that Jor-El and Lara also share that same fate in the hallucination. The scariest part: to Superman, this feels real. Even though it is happening inside his mind, the pain, guilt, and trauma of killing his own parents weighs on him as if it truly happened. This nightmare sequence isn't just a one-time thing. Brainiac, one of Superman's greatest enemies, reveals that this is the 575th time in the last 6 hours that Superman has killed Krypton's ruling class in his hallucinations. And he isn't stopping there. Superman is expected to relive this cycle thousands of times. This cruel torture forces Superman into an endless loop of guilt and pain, turning his bright origin into a never-ending nightmare. The story is a dark mirror of one of Superman's most famous storylines, For the Man Who Has Everything, 1985. In that classic tale, Superman is trapped in an illusion where Krypton never exploded. He gets to live a happy life with his family, but when he realizes it's all a lie, it crushes him emotionally. In contrast, Absolute Superman gives him the opposite. He isn't stuck in a dream utopia, but instead trapped in his worst nightmare, forced to watch and even cause the death of his parents over and over again. One of the things that makes this storyline so powerful is the way it reshapes Superman's origin without completely discarding what fans already know. Krypton still explodes. Kal-El still gets sent to Earth, and he still grows up with the burden of being the last son of Krypton. But Jason Aaron and the creative team add extra layers of tragedy that make this version of Superman's past even heavier. For example, Jor-El in this story isn't shown as a high-ranking scientist in Krypton's society, as he is in most versions. Instead, he's portrayed as a working-class citizen, which makes his warnings about Krypton's destruction not just scientific but also rebellious. He's a man standing up against a system that refuses to listen, which makes his struggle even more meaningful. His death, along with Lara's, feels less like the fall of privileged scientists and more like the silencing of rebels fighting for survival. This gives Superman's legacy an extra edge, framing him as someone who comes from a background of resistance and rebellion rather than just science and fate. In another major change, Kal-El isn't just a baby when Krypton explodes. He's old enough to actually remember his parents' sacrifice. This makes their loss cut even deeper. In many versions of Superman's story, he knows about his parents through recordings and crystals, but he doesn't actually remember them. Here, he does. And that memory shapes everything about his personality. It explains his refusal to give up, his respect for life, and his constant struggle against cynicism. Superman isn't just fighting for justice because it's the right thing to do. He's doing it because he remembers exactly what his parents gave up to make sure he survived. But this also leaves him vulnerable. Villains like Brainiac and Ra's al Ghul know how to exploit Superman's trauma. By trapping him in these nightmares, they force him to relive the destruction of Krypton in the worst way possible, tearing at his mental strength. On top of that, enemies like Peacemaker Smith can use Superman's strict moral code against him. Because Superman values life so deeply, his enemies can manipulate that commitment to put him in impossible situations. At the same time, this absolute version of Superman doesn't have the same level of self-control as the main DC Universe Superman. He is more emotional, more vulnerable, and more likely to lash out. That makes him both more dangerous and more tragic. If he wakes up from this artificially induced nightmare state in the wrong way, there's a real chance he could release an uncontrollable burst of power that hurts not just his enemies, but also innocent people. This version of Superman shows just how fragile the line between hope and despair can be. The same man who inspires the world could also become a weapon of mass destruction if pushed too far. That tension makes the absolute Superman storyline one of the most compelling reimaginings of Superman in years. What makes Absolute Superman especially interesting for longtime fans is the way it builds on old stories, but twists them in shocking new directions. Readers familiar with For the Man Who Has Everything will recognize the idea of Superman being trapped in an illusion. But instead of giving him something he secretly wishes for, this illusion gives him everything he fears. Instead of hope, he's given despair. Instead of family, he's given guilt. Instead of peace, he's given endless war in his own mind. The result is a Superman who is broken in a way we've never seen before. His classic backstory already made him tragic, a lone survivor carrying the weight of an entire world's extinction. But here, that tragedy is amplified. He isn't just carrying the loss of Krypton, he's carrying the guilt of believing that he destroyed his own parents. Even though it's not truly real, it feels real to him. That makes it just as damaging. And yet, in a strange way, this makes his heroism even more powerful. If Superman can still fight for justice after living through this endless cycle of nightmares, then his hope and determination are even more inspiring. It shows that Superman's greatest strength isn't his powers. It's his heart and his refusal to stop doing good, no matter how much pain he goes through. This is why many fans are calling Absolute Superman one of the best reimaginings of his origin ever. It takes the familiar foundation of Superman's story and makes it darker, sadder, and more emotionally raw without completely throwing away what makes him Superman. DC Comics has always experimented with alternate versions of its heroes. From Elseworlds tales to the dark multiverse stories, fans are used to seeing twisted versions of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. But Absolute Superman stands out because it doesn't just make Superman evil for shock value. Instead, it digs into his trauma and uses it to show how fragile even the strongest hero can be when pushed to his limits. The idea of Superman killing his own parents, even in a hallucination, is shocking. It's the kind of twist that makes readers stop and rethink everything they know about the character. But it also serves as a reminder of why Superman's story continues to matter. His journey isn't just about being powerful. It's about how he carries the burden of loss, guilt, and impossible expectations, and still chooses to be a symbol of hope. Absolute Superman 11 is now available from DC Comics, and it promises to push Kal-El even further into darkness before giving him the chance to rise again. For fans who want to see a different side of Superman, one that's scarier, sadder, and more intense, this storyline is a must-read.